What is up? We meet again.
We meet again. It's good to be here.
Yeah, it's good to see you again. I can't remember when we did our last podcast. It was a couple years ago, but I think a lot's changed since then.
The world is a very different place and has a new hype cycle, and there's this thing called AI that people seem interested in.
Yeah, and for your company, Prefect, things seem to have changed too. I think you're known as an orchestrator. At least this is my view. And now MCP all day, all night.
Yeah, not quite all day because we still have a really profitable and excellent orchestration business, but it's certainly consumed a lot of us now to deliver like a new kind of infrastructure tooling. Surprisingly, to the same audience, it turns out, which is something I'm really excited to explore with you because I think those worlds are way more overlapping than people think, or at least I thought. But yeah, it's been an exciting couple of years for the business to just navigate why is data important and why does data matter, and now we have new consumers of data and they happen to be autonomous, and it's just it's been wild to see what's old is new again in a lot of ways.
Yeah, for sure. I'm kind of taking a step back for the audience. What was the original vision of Prefect?
So Prefect was born out of my experience as a data practitioner and just spending an awful lot of time fighting my tools and even wondering if things happened. And so I had the world's worst introduction to orchestration and automation as someone who just didn't like coming in and finding out stuff was broken or hadn't run. And the original vision was, how do we build, I was part of a team that helped bring Apache Airflow to market. I got plenty of experience in what it takes to build an orchestration product there. And Prefect was sort of born from this idea of how do we build the orchestrator of choice for data science and machine learning use cases, these scale out dynamic worlds where people, data scientists are not software engineers. And good luck convincing them that they should rewrite every piece of code as a DAG or something like that. And we wanted to make an orchestration framework that felt natural for that PyData world. And as that platform grew and took root, we found a broader audience in not just data science, but data engineering as a whole. And now we try to sort of serve the full stack universe of the data lifecycle through all of its different ins and outs.
Yeah, that's super cool. I think did you come up in the kind of the modern data stack era as well?
We did. I mean, the company is now 7 years old, which is extraordinary to me. So we've seen.
It's crazy.
Yeah, we sort of were on the scene claiming that we could do something interesting before I think MDS became an acronym. These days, I don't even know if people know what MDS is, right? Like, I don't know. We don't talk about it much anymore. But that feels to me like an early COVID phenomenon of like SaaS and data taking off, which we absolutely participated in and I think helped evangelize what we were up to. And then I think for a time, data became like a dirty word for a little bit, and that was interesting. And now I feel like it's sort of coming back as an input to some of the more interesting AI use cases.
Sure. Yeah, because MDS was definitely hot 2021.
Yeah.
Interest rates rose, and that kind of put the kibosh on a few things. And then, but strangely, in 2022, by a funny coincidence, this thing called ChatGPT came out in November. Then the world changed, and all of a sudden, AI became
God, that feels
popular.
It's certainly popular. I mean, 22 for ChatGPT, which is absolutely correct, but still feels kind of wild to say out loud. That feels like it's a lot longer ago than I feel like most of the
Yeah.
AI feels like a very now thing to me, and that's.
Well, I remember we were during COVID. My friends and I on Zoom calls, we were dorking out with a GPT-3 that just came out. That was like 2020. I forgot about it honestly for a couple of years until ChatGPT came out. I was like, oh, that thing, because it kind of sucked actually. I don't know if you remember, but it wasn't that good.
Remember.
Yeah, so I was like, okay, whatever. But it took the world by storm, and then. Yeah, lots happened since then, right?
Well, that was back when I remember my first introduction to this was some of my team were like so far out on the bleeding edge, like before you should have been there, but I was really proud of them for it, of trying to set up like a Slack bot, like a GPT powered Slack bot. This would have been in September or October of 22. So whatever, Da Vinci, would that have been the state of the art code name of OpenAI's model back then, right? Like whatever it was. And I was so confused that it was hallucinating URLs to our documentation that looked like real, but they were wrong. And like today we know what that is. We know what that phenomenon is. And back then I remember being so confused about like what kind of technology can do this. And so my entering into that world and like dusting off like what it takes to be an ML practitioner, so to speak, was trying to solve this mystery of we have this bot that gives like frankly better answers than I would have expected.
Mm-hmm.
but always adds on a fake URL at the end that looks real. And then and why is that? And the rest is 3 years of very interesting history.
Walk me through that, because I think we'll get to the punchline in a bit, but you're unusual in a way where I think you've done one of the hardest pivots that I've seen a company make, and maybe it doesn't seem like you're pivoting, but from my perspective, you have.
It doesn't feel like a pivot. I would even emphasize it's not a pivot, because we haven't done a thing to change either the momentum or the growth rate even of our orchestration business. Okay. It's still flying along. If anything, one of the things that we work hard on internally, I just came from a meeting for making sure that our team feels as expert in the AI domain as they do in the data domain. And again, I'm very eager to let's unpack some of why that commonality is a little easier than people think it is. But yeah, we pivot is a word I want to stay away from with regard to Prefect. If anything, it's I don't think a lot of people realize that Prefect is the same business behind Fast MCP as behind our orchestration product. And I almost want to declare from the rooftops, no, we are good at building software that people like to use.
Yeah, well, apologies for
No apologies needed. Not at all. It's a great opportunity for me to get to say that out loud. This is all so new. It's happening fast. There's no doubt that there are more people who want to use fun AI tools than hardcore data engineers that we're used to dealing with. And so this is an identity crisis, if you will, that we as a business are taking on in a real way, where maybe it would be easier if we had a horrible data business and all of a sudden had this lifesaver from the MCP world.
Right.
Because the Fast MCP recently crossed 1 million downloads a day. It's insane.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's really insane. So for me, this is like a point of pride, if nothing else, that we can declare those. So no apology needed. It's almost like how do we make sure that we are expressing the same DNA in two places?
Well, walk me through that journey though, right? So we kind of teed up the sort of the genesis of Prefect. But then this thing called Fast MCP comes around. But before we talk about that, maybe give the dummy version of MCP. I think that some people still may not have the memo on that.
So MCP, let's not even talk about MCP. Let's just talk about AI agents for a second, and we'll get to MCP. I think one of the reason I want to start there is a lot of people will push back on, do we even need MCP? Is it just a glorified API? There's objections that we can handle if we just start in the right place. And the right place is this. AI agents need to talk to our software and to our systems, because if they don't have the ability to take side effects and have impact in our business, then they are just glorified chatbots, right? The whole appeal of an AI agent is you give it an instruction, you send it off into the world, and it actually has an impact on the world. And so there's this challenge of how do you guarantee that it's going to be able to have that impact? And for about 2 years, maybe let's say 2023 and 4, predominant answer to that question, in fact, the one that I would have bet on is, well, you write Python code in some sort of orchestration framework. There are many, and many of them are excellent. And you define not only the sort of while loop that is that agent's brain and how it looks at the world, but also all of the tools written as Python code that it can interact with, and you put them together, and that's great. And what happened is you have this rise of a consumer-facing software that embeds AI agents, and you don't get to write Python code and hand it to it. And you have this problem of how do you make that software interoperable with other pieces of software. So Cursor is probably one of the most popular examples of this. Cursor is an IDE where there's an agentic loop embedded in it, and I want that to take some action in my computer, in my business, whatever the case may be. How do I give it access? And the simple answer is, well, just tell it to call an API or to use a command line tool. These are AI agents, and I think there are two ways that people hear that phrase. These are AI agents. Most people, I think they're geniuses, they're oracles, they can do anything, they are magic. And I think those of us who have used them more than once think these are really dumb processes that do really well on really well prescribed things, and really badly anytime else. And so the goal of working with them efficiently, I think, is to make the state space, the decision space, as small as possible. And so under all circumstances, if we want to take an AI agent and give it access to some tool, and we don't have the ability to cram some source code into it, then we want to give it the most narrowly defined prescribed API possible for doing that. MCP, finally, is Anthropic's proposal of what that API should look like. It happens to have a lot more than just a schema. It has bidirectional communication, and it has updates and progress and notification. It's all this stuff that we could maybe spend a moment on later. But the core of it is, what is the narrowest version of a protocol by which any agent can know it's going to be able to talk to any piece of software and get an expected response back. And the upshot of this is, if you have an agent, Cursor being one example, and you have an MCP server, GitHub being one example, they can just plug into each other sort of automatically, and you get this very cliched but useful example of plugging in a USB-C cable into your computer. It could be a printer, it could be a camera, it could be a microphone, who knows what's on the other end of it. The two of them will work because they know how to talk to each other. And that's what MCP is.
That's it? Good explanation?
That's it. It's that easy. Well, I don't understand what all the hubbub is.
Right.
We go back to November of 2024 when Anthropic introduced MCP. And I thought this was super cool. We have, because Prefect's an automation platform, and because of my own interest in some of our own efforts in the agentic space, I'm really interested in how do you automate agentic operations as part of a broader workflow. Like, that's a major use case for us. And so MCP comes along and sort of promises to make it easier to plug any X into any Y, and that's kind of what we spend a lot of time doing. I'm like, this could be great. And so I take a look at the SDK, and the day it was released, it was kind of in a rough form. I wouldn't say it was the most pleasant thing to use, but there was a lot of utility under it. And so I spent a couple hours banging my head on it, trying to get it to work. And frankly, I just thought this could be more Pythonic, this could be more idiomatic. And so I wrote FastMCP almost a year ago now as a high-level Pythonic interface to the model context protocol. And that was that. It became like a project for me. It was exciting, it was interesting. It let me prove out sort of the promise of MCP in a much, much easier, much faster to iterate way. And I didn't think that much of it until I got a call from David, who runs the MCP, who invented MCP and who sort of runs that at Anthropic, asking me if I could make it possible for them to incorporate it into the official SDK. And I have to say, this was one of the coolest things that's ever happened, period. Anthropic wants to incorporate this software into their SDK. Like, wow, what an amazing thing. So worked with David, relicensed the software, they took it in, and then that was sort of that. I didn't think that much of it, kept the repo up, didn't really maintain it, didn't need that much attention. I thought that was that. And what changed is this spring, I think the catalyst might have been OpenAI and Google basically indicating their support of MCP for their own products. But whatever it was, as many of us know, and many folks listening to this probably are aware, MCP just took off, like hype wave beyond hype waves. And folks started showing up on a repo that I was basically not maintaining, demanding like more high-level primitives and interfaces for building MCP applications. And at first I was kind of like, no, this all exists now in the SDK. But one of the things I really commend David and that team for, I just wrote a blog post about this actually, is they are really focused on building the best possible SDK for working with a protocol. They are not focused on building this high-level application interface for folks to build with. They are hoping that an ecosystem emerges. And so I saw an opportunity back in, I guess it was April this year, to redirect that FastMCP effort away from the core server building DX and really start building out higher-level primitives for what does it mean to build an MCP application? Like, I didn't even know at the time, what is a good MCP application?
Right.
What are the design patterns here? The user is an autonomous agent, not a person. We stopped talking about user stories. We started talking about agent stories. And, is this how business logic will be delivered to a new class of consumers? Became sort of this question I was obsessed with. And so FastMCP went from being, as I said, that developer, that just core developer experience into, now we ship ways of composing different modules, proxying, auth, you name it, integrations with every framework you can think of. Like, it's just about how do you take an idea and expose it to an agent as fast as possible and get it into production. And we've had this amazing response.
Yeah, just that easy. Does the name come from, does it take inspiration from Fast API?
Yeah, absolutely. Originally it did. And look, it's one of these things where, in all honesty, if I knew how popular it was going to be, I'd have given it like a real name. But it's
it works.
I don't think FastMCP is a great name for a product. I actually think it's a rather bad name for a product, but it just goes to show the only thing that really determines if it's good or bad is if people use it. So if people like FastMCP, it's called FastMCP.
That's dope. What was it like to find out that you're getting 1 million downloads a day?
I was just blown away. I mean, at no point, the crazy thing about the growth curve on this thing is if you look at it at any time frame, it looks the same. It's this crazy exponential like growth curve. Getting to 1 million happened like all of a sudden it just shut up, and I think it was like 1.1 or 1.2 yesterday or something like that. It's just humbling to see that many people. Prefect, we've been building software for 7 years, and the most recent version of our open source is downloaded something like 200 or 300,000 times a day, which I've always thought is an extraordinary level to reach. I've been so proud of that and amazed by that and feel such a strong obligation to the number of folks doing that. It took us 7 years to get there. For this thing in basically like 6 months to go to 1 million and still be growing, you feel the weight of that community in a different way. And it's so large that unlike with Prefect, we don't have a Slack channel where I have a manageable amount of people. Like throughout Prefect's life, we tried to answer every question in 15 minutes. That was like one of the hallmarks of how we started the company. 15-minute SLAs on any question. I think we kept that up for like 4 years. This thing is so runaway that even creating the community around it is a little bit hard, which maybe sounds strange given that it's so obviously large, but you sort of miss the milestones of forming those relationships that I'm more familiar with. One of the big milestones we've had recently, which I'm super excited about, is this guy named Bill Easton, who works at Elastic, who just joined us as the first external maintainer, so not employed by Prefect, to be clear, on the Fast MCP project. And I really hope Bill was one of the earliest adopters, by far most vocal members of that community, and just like didn't earn this spot, didn't deserve this spot, sort of like we'd be insane not to have him in this spot. He's been so impactful. And I hope that we find others who like really step up in that way and want to shape this thing.
Maybe I'll have to start contributing to it.
Yeah. You want to be an open source maintainer, don't you, Joe? It's what's missing in your life?
It's crossed my mind. I've maintained a few projects before. It is fun in that sense where you do feel like you're, I don't know if giving back is the right phrase to use, but you're part of something much bigger. But I've never been on something where it was like, 1 million downloads a day, or I guess it's funny because you also mentioned 1.2 million, I think, and that's like the rounding error where you're like, I don't know, whatever, but that's also what Prefect does in a day, that rounding error. So it's like, whatever.
Exactly. It is just wild when you try to put it in any kind of perspective. And even on the repo, there's a big difference between people might download it a lot, but do they actually show up and interact with it? And so even on the repo, I don't know where it is today, but soon, in a matter of weeks, it'll cross 20,000 stars already. Like, it's just the attention is growing. I wake up every morning, there's new issues, there's new PRs, there's new integrations. I feel bad. I feel a pressure now when I can't attend to it. But in a funny way, it's like, well, I have this day job also, like in addition to maintaining this thing. So I try to do my best to serve everyone who shows up on that repo, me and my team. This is not a one-man show by any means.
I don't imagine it could be. When you're dealing with issues and pull requests now, do you have a sense of how many of those issues are AI-generated or requests?
You can tell. They're very long when an LLM writes them, and they're usually like wrong somewhere. You just gotta go through. You're like, this can't be right. I got to a point. I wrote this blog post maybe a week or two ago, and it was kind of on this point. The post is actually about like how to say no as an OSS maintainer, and it's hard to say no in general. And I think for those of us who work in product-led organizations, saying no is a familiar thing because it's always to force ideas to be better, to make it into the product, right? Like product-led organizations say no a lot, and it's always a constructive no. When you're in open source, you don't have the trust and relationship that makes saying no easy, always. And you also you skip the step of creating the common language for how we're going to propose ideas and debate ideas and talk about them. It's hard enough to say no in open source to someone who's worked hard and written code and shown up. It is even weirder to say no to someone who probably cracked open Claude Code an hour before, produced 5,000 lines of something that's nominally useful and probably works and passes all its tests, and explain to them, like, this doesn't actually agree with what we're trying to do with this framework. And that's been a new muscle that I'm trying to learn how to flex here. We have gotten to the point where something's obviously LLM generated, we just say no to it. That feels a little two-faced because we are absolutely using LLMs to write a lot of the code in FastMCP. This is not an artisanal handmade library. This is absolutely operating at a scale that's made possible by AI assistance. But someone recently told us that the the various like agent.md and claude.md files that we have in the repo are like way more comprehensive than what you see in a lot of places. I'm like, yeah, because these are partners of ours on the repo. They have to do a good job or we can't use their output. So we get a lot of LLM stuff, a lot of LLM junk, some stuff that I'm sure is written in LLM and is really good. I don't mean to say that all LLM is bad, but when you crack open an issue and it's 3,000 words to tell you that a keyword argument is missing, it's just like a proofread. This last sentence is all I needed to get the 10 minutes back. I could have just gone and fixed this. Right? That's a little exhausting.
Have you started employing agents to look at the requests?
We do
as well. Okay.
We do. I have not found that they're that amazing on a proactive basis. So what we do right now is we do proactively try to look for duplicate issues, which is a big problem on a popular repo like this. People will open up an issue without searching. It's often already been answered. Not always. So we do look for duplicates with agents, and we do triage with agents, which is, again, this is one of those like tiny violin problems of an open source maintainer, but classifying something as a bug, as what components, like that takes a lot of time and can distract from really just getting in and investigating it. So those are the two things we always use agents for on the repo. And then we have one that's sort of free form that only Bill or I can invoke to sort of do the next step of investigation or editing if we need. But I'm curious if you see this popping up in any of your domains at all. I think the biggest impact of AI that I feel in a negative way is this transference of burden, where opening an issue is a good example. Like opening an issue or writing a PR is hard nominally. You have to produce code. You have to stand by that code. You're sort of taking responsibility and ownership. And when you can push a button and generate it, all of a sudden the burden of sort of ensuring that it meets some bar transfers to the reviewer. And that used to work really well as a many to one kind of funnel. And now all of a sudden, I think disproportionately the burden is on me in this example, but I think many others. My brother's an attorney and is explaining to me that he sees this now in law. Like briefs and documents are just written and then sort of the burden of proof. It's an overloaded phrase in this context, but the burden to actually prove out that it's good has been moved to a person that didn't traditionally hold it. And I think that's a real challenge.
Yeah, I think it was a recent Harvard article too about work slop. I think that there's a lot of transference going on where the description of it for the audience is AI in a lot of cases is actually creating more work for people, and not in a good way, because you're having to review things that you normally would trust somebody to do. Like it's almost approximately correct, but the problem is it might not be to the point where, so you have to go back there and review everything. Like you said, 3,000 words to get to the punchline at the end. You're just like, cool, thanks for the work. Yeah, I mean, I see it in content a lot, and yeah, but I don't know. And it's interesting. I talked to my lawyer. He says the same thing. Like he's always looking at just courts, suspending lawyers for, I don't know, using LLMs in the wrong way, maybe.
Making up a case, or
it still happens, and he's just like, you would think, I think that whole incident that in New York that happened a couple of years ago, you think people got the memo on it, but nah, it's still happening. So
it's a very seductive technology. It looks like it makes life easy if you don't put in the effort to sort of look over its shoulder. Actually, this is pure anecdata, what I'm about to say, but I have now heard it repeated many places, which is if you look at engineering organizations that do use AI, I would have had an expectation, many people I think do, that the most avid users of it are going to be the more junior engineers for a variety of reasons, including I think the headline, it represents the biggest delta in terms of contribution ability for someone who's more junior in their career. And what you actually see, or at least what the anecdata suggests, is actually the most senior users are the heaviest users of it by cost. And it took me a moment to sort of parcel this out, and the best explanation I've gotten is that the more senior you are, the more you reject what the AI generates and send it back to do it again, and you have more cycles. And I think that's really interesting, and it suggests the greatest skill in the AI age is actually this oversight and this managerial ability, which these more senior folks have. And now I'm wondering how do more junior folks acquire that quickly? In one sense, they have more opportunities because AI is spouting out more stuff, but on the other hand, are they getting sort of the tutelage that they would have normally gotten in an engineering organization?
It's something I've been thinking a lot about. I mean, I advise universities and obviously work in a lot of educational aspects. It's a big question right now, right? I mean, the thing I've been proposing is, you absolutely have to master the fundamentals before you're able to move on. It's so different than what happens in actual engineering, where you have to learn the basics, like, I don't know, Newtonian physics is pretty handy if you're building things like bridges that might fall, thermodynamics and such. But then, you have to do a fundamentals of engineering exam at the end to showcase that you actually know what you're doing. I think something similar should happen, in the data space, computer science and so forth. That gives you the basis to use these tools.
Yeah.
The contrary opinion is, well, actually, before I finish on that, it was interesting. I was talking to one of my professor friends the other day. So he teaches a class in causal inference, and he said this is the semester where AI just infiltrated all the homework, all the assignments. This is a graduate level class. He noted that the answers and the assignments that he get back were just so far off the mark.
Really?
Like the answers were so horrific and bad because everyone's using AI, but nobody knows what the hell they're doing anymore. And so he said, if you cannot explain how you came up with this answer, I'm going to give you a 0. And that's how it's going to be. And you just wasted all your money on a class. So pay attention and actually make an effort to try and do things. Because I think that the incentive right now for the students is, well, I just want to pass the class. You can certainly try and do that. But I think his response, I do agree, is like, if you're going to do this, defend it or nothing.
Yeah, there's almost this question. I remember I started my career in finance as a quant, and sort of one of the differences between me and my boss is that he came up in his career before Google was like a thing in the workplace, and I came up after Google was a thing in the workplace. And so I didn't care when I'm interviewing someone for a quant role if they've got a formula memorized or not. I only cared, like, just tell me how does this work? How do you think about what's the intuition here? He cared so deeply if they had memorized it. And I remember thinking, well, I don't know. I haven't memorized all these. Like, I don't know what they are off the top of my head. I just go look them up whenever I need them. And like, I feel like we're going through a similar sea change where it feels like cheating to those of us who have not grown up with AI tooling to be able to just produce content that says whatever you want. And I think there's this moment where that's really uncomfortable for everyone involved. But it feels like once that becomes an ingrained and actual skill, in the same way that like you can watch someone use Google and they can be good at Google or they can be bad at Google. And I think very much the same. People are good with AI and people are bad with AI. And it's kind of, right?
Well, I busted my kid the other day. So he was doing math homework. He's a freshman in high school. He was just simple algebra, right? Solve for whatever. He was just pasting the formula into Google or some AI tool and just getting the answer. And so I had to call him out. I was like, okay, so do you understand how this works? Because I'm going to make you do every problem by hand now. And of course he didn't. Right?
No,
I just like, no.
Sorry, I got distracted. Motorcade just went by, which is a DC only problem. So I apologize if that came through the.
No, that's fine. No, it gives it a nice vibe. I mean, how are you? I guess you run a company. How are you seeing your engineers working with AI?
I love to see them working with AI. I have spent a long time recruiting people to this business, telling them that if we hit the bottom of our growth objectives, their workload's going to double or more a year from the moment we're speaking. And it's going to be their responsibility to figure out how to be more productive and keep up with that. Even if we hire, we're not going to hire as fast as this business grows. So it can't be from hiring and it can't be from not doing the work. So like I kind of, my final interview question, so to speak, is like the most important thing for a Prefect employee is how are you going to be more productive? And I feel like now we have tooling that makes this ludicrously easy to do if you put in the time to figure it out, because that is a real thing. I feel that every day. How can I get more done than I did yesterday, but I only have 24 hours? And so I'm all for anything that makes us more productive. It is a very slippery slope. If I weren't using these tools deeply myself, I might be more tempted to throw money at more of them, any AI-enabled thing. The fact of the matter is there are products that are much better at using AI than other products. And I think that takes like careful discernment. So one of the ways we've approached this, especially in engineering, although I would be shocked if there's someone at Prefect who isn't using AI at least at some part of their daily routine at this point. Especially in engineering, our approach has been use whatever you want, but come back and advocate for the good and sort of let's have a very open conversation. I think like our AI tools, Slack channel is now one of the more popular places for any version of news that helps people be better like AI digital users/citizens. And, a couple things have really taken hold. We don't enforce them, but to the extent that those products have natural network effects like sharing Claude.md files, which guide the Cloud Code product. Well, if someone's got really amazing work there and is sharing it, it makes people more likely to come over there. And then, of course, we can get better pricing and like it has this sort of virtuous cycles. We don't pigeonhole folks. We try to make whatever tooling people want to experiment with available. We do, just as a matter of best practice. Prefect's a profitable company now. We're trying to stay that way. And
Congrats.
One of the ways we do that, thank you, I'm super proud about that. And one of the ways we do that is by keeping an eye on expenses. Like we don't have an enormous and unlimited bank account that we just draw from. We charge our customers effectively to use tools. And so we've been trying to be very mindful on how do we keep an eye on that.
That's super cool. Kind of back to MCP. How are you seeing users using Fast MCP in the wild?
So this is where stuff starts to get like real interesting between what we are learning and I think what the popular conception of this is. So I think that everyone, including me, expected MCP to take off for the headline use case I said a moment ago. I have an agent, my IDE. You have an MCP server, your GitHub, your Figma, your whoever you are. I want them to talk to each other. I now refer to this with a very boring name. This is the external use case. A company is exposing functionality outside the company to its own customers and users. We expected that to be what people use FastMCP for, and I have a document somewhere which is now collecting dust about how there were mobile apps and now there will be MCP apps, and this is how you distribute business logic. And I still think that will happen, but what is happening overwhelmingly instead is companies are deploying MCP servers internally. And the reason this is so interesting is it also means I don't actually get to see a lot of what people do unless I go build the relationship with them. Fortunately, this is one of the places where the cross-pollination with our data business is really strong. Before we get to the very surprising fact that these are data teams, it turns out, that are deploying MCP servers internally, it's that as an orchestration company, we also don't get to know what people are doing with our software. They take it into their businesses, they build cool things, and the only way for us to get better is by building really strong relationships and talking the talk and sort of earning that trust. And so I do find myself now, for some of our largest or more vocal users, sort of redeploying that skill set in a new way. And again, I don't have a way to prove this to you. I don't think I can point to a number that proves it, but overwhelmingly the conversations we have with people who are doing real production deployments of FastMCP servers or using our FastMCP cloud product are internal teams with somewhere between 10 and 100 users of that MCP, probably not more, although at some of our larger organizations there are some more interesting design patterns that have emerged. And the use case is almost always to connect data or processes to the stakeholders that depend on them. And I think if I squint at this, I think we're a little early, but I think that MCP in some ways is fulfilling the promise of the self-serve data mart / semantic layer that was sort of too large a bite to take out of the infinity of, you have 100,000 columns in your data warehouse. Great that you can self-serve them. How do you know which one? That kind of problem.
Yeah.
And so we're seeing it in this way, but the one asterisk over that is I don't think in these organizations we've seen a mandate that the data team should do this. In fact, a lot of organizations that we go into, even our own customers, and we're like, so blah, 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 we're MCP, it's taking over, and your data team's deploying it. And there'll be this moment, they're like, oh yeah, and it is our data team that's deploying it. And it's almost like circumstantially, the data team is the team that seems to have the most to benefit from the internal MCP use case. They are the team that is most often asked for business context and, even workflows. One of the prototypical use cases in Prefect is our CSMs needing to change or adjust a customer billing license, number of seats they have or something like that, which in the simplest sense is just programmatic access to our database. So that's, in theory, that's easy, but we don't give programmatic access to our database just because someone needs to make a change. That has to go through access control and so we build intense workflows to make sure that that's governed access. An MCP server is now a way to make that available to an agent. That's good, that's easy, but also comes with a lot of terror about governance and audit trails and stuff like that. And so having control of the server framework and getting to inject observability and access control and stuff into it all of a sudden makes this a tractable problem where a CSM can now have that access through a natural language interface, which makes it super easy for them while also making it governable and observable to the data and analytics teams that are responsible for that access. And so that's the bridge that we're seeing emerge organically and surprisingly, but now leaning so fast, so hard into that because it's super exciting. I know these people.
Well, and it's funny you bring up the kind of the self-serve as well. I was recently in London doing a closed door session with a bunch of data leaders there. And what was interesting is they're saying that the use of things like Microsoft Copilot, for example, right? If you're an enterprise, you probably use Microsoft Copilot. And they said it's interesting because the governance piece that you hit on, I think, was the thing that was concerning to these leaders, where Copilot had access to a bunch of documents people, regular users, non-technical users will use Copilot to get answers to questions. Who knows if the answers are right? But hey, you're getting an answer. And so, but the usage of this workflow it's near universal according to at least some of the companies I talk to. But the governance piece is definitely the one that I think scared the daylights out of these leaders, because it just sort of went unencumbered, unhindered. Like people were just like, I can chat with things, cool. I'll just bypass the data team and just go do this.
Totally. And some of that pressure, I think, comes from the fact that so now a Google Doc or Word doc or whatever, a slideshow, whatever it is now part of the provenance of this chat, whereas that's not part of the data team's typical mandate. And that's why I think this is sort of like arriving on the data team, because it is nominally data. But this is also where this problem feels very familiar to me, because is it that different than a SQL query accessed a table and delivered that into a dashboard that went into somebody's brain for a decision? Like, no, it's just as data in a different and far less structured form now. And so again, if we can interface with that infrastructure, we can provide tooling around this governance. But what it requires is some like programmatic, not like, I don't know. The world of the agent is a stochastic, non-deterministic, like terrifying and very fun place. It's not a good place to build governance structures. At least not at this time, at least not if you're not like OpenAI scale, right? So how do we do this? Good news, we have this thing called an MCP server. It's going to be the standard of how those agents deal with your business, and it is a 100% LLM-free zone. It is a server. It is programmatic. And so I get really excited about the opportunity to instrument those servers, which we are now responsible for the vast majority of them, which is really fun, our framework, I mean. And so we can actually help people figure out what's going on in those servers and leave the sort of messy natural language world on its own. And that I think is how we start to actually make this problem manageable, as opposed to, you see, like ask the agent to tell you every time it accesses a file, or like have the agent self-report. It's like these things can barely do anything. It's so the difference between what people think they can do and what they are actually good at doing is sort of extraordinary.
This is very true. And I think, I mean, so I have a small business that I just started recently. I've wired MCP into pretty much everything at this point. Like it runs a lot of stuff. And you're absolutely right. These things are dumb as a brick. But when I travel the world, giving talks, talking with practitioners, leaders, it's interesting because the disconnect between, I think, the practicality of where we are right now and just reality and the expectations of these agents, it's a pretty big gulf in some cases, right? I mean, when you start seeing reports of, big tech company X or Y or Z or whatever, or Walmart, they have their agents now, and it's like, they're going to replace everybody. I find the mental gymnastics are very crazy right now.
Yeah. As someone who has an organization that is highly AI enabled, the idea that I could replace any of them with an AI is absurd. They're more productive. Their need to hire may be diminished as a consequence of that. But the idea that an AI could actually replace, like, we're so far from that on any level.
Yeah. Thank you. I
feel like that needs to be like said out loud. Something.
Well, no, it does, but just the sheer amount of bullshit that I see right now, this is a talking point, is interesting. I'm not sure if it's because it makes for good headlines and good press releases for people or whatever, but what happens is it starts scaring workers, obviously, and it also makes managers and leaders feel like, okay, if we're not doing the agentic thing, we're going to be left behind. Then there's this notion of, there's going to be $1 billion company run by like one person. And all this other stuff. Yeah. So it's just, but when you play with these tools though, like, I often get timeouts, because it runs out of tokens or whatever happens.
Yeah. Timeouts, fallback. And again, these are like, I use all these words for the last 7 years to sell orchestration software. Like, what happens when your database is down? Oh, we retry it. What happens when you run out of memory? Oh, we, move to a different system or a different model. Like, it is this feeling of everything is old is new again, with magic pixie dust because it speaks English now instead of SQL or Python. And this is one of the reasons that it's been so fun. We did not, to be clear, we at Prefect did not plan to have this foothold in the MCP space. This is the most exciting thing. This is excellent. This is wonderful, but it's not planned. But having found ourselves there, it seems like the big challenge is actually the orchestration of these models against the outcomes you're trying to drive. And it's like, okay, we know this so well, but different audience, different product, different everything. So I don't want to pretend that this is like automatically fungible and or anything like that, but it really does rhyme, at least. And it's been really fun to sort of see those. And then I just keep coming back. The fact that the same customer of our data platform is now the customer of the MCP platform is such a fascinating phenomenon. It makes perfect sense. Like I'm not trying to say it's like surprising or wrong. It's just we didn't expect it because this is a new technology. We didn't know where is it going to find its own product market fit, so to speak. Who is going to most benefit from the ability to just make stuff available programmatically to agents? It's the same people who have been trying to make stuff available programmatically to humans inside a business. It's the data and the analytics teams. And it's really fascinating to see how quickly they're all moving into this space.
Help me with this question, because I think you're in a very good position where you have a very popular tool. Well, you have two popular tools. One's just more popular than the other. Do you feel like, you also mentioned product market fit, like how much control do you think you have over the direction of where MCP or Fast MCP goes, or how much of that is going to be market driven and out of your control, and you're just responding to what happens?
It's a great question. I'm more impressed by the MCP committee than I am with any other open source committee that I've either been on or seen. The maniacal focus on delivering a useful protocol is very real. The fact that it is chiefly sponsored by an extraordinarily large Anthropic, probably doesn't hurt in terms of making sure that single-mindedness is there. To be clear, I don't think they're like mercenary or anything like that. I just think they are like the incentives are all pointed in the right direction to make this as useful as possible. With that in mind, the spec is evolving rapidly, and it's evolving. There's a Discord if folks want to see how this is done. There's a Discord which is extraordinarily active. I can't keep up with it, and the Model Context Protocol repos where everything is pretty much done in the open, and it's you can watch how this is being made and see how different forces are steering it. I think absolutely to your question, there have been attempts to steer it more this way or that way, especially in the early days, especially with a lot of the transport stuff and auth stuff that wasn't fully baked when it launched. A lot of vendors, if you go digging, you can see the fingerprints of an awful lot of vendors steering it this way or steering it that way.
Interesting.
When it comes to Fast MCP, we are I guess what I'll say is I feel very privileged whenever I'm asked to opine or participate in any way on the protocol side of things, and I have a great relationship now with them and also all the folks who make the Python SDK. With Fast MCP, pretty much we try to take that SDK as a given. The protocol is going to work the way it's going to work. Every couple of months it changes. That's a thing. And the folks who care about the protocol are going to evangelize it into the ecosystem. And our job is to make sure that the folks who want to use this in their businesses don't waste 1 second with how to set it up, configure it, deploy it, authenticate it, observe it. We want to make sure that their path to prod is 60 seconds or less, basically. And so we will adjust depending on what we see for sure, but that's sort of the mission that we've given Fast MCP and now our related MCP products is I launched Prefect under this banner of eliminate negative engineering, which never quite got the resonance I thought it might in the data world, but it's still true. It's still true 7 or 8 years later. It's negative engineering. There's all this stuff you got to do before your agent can talk to an MCP server. And so the mission for Fast MCP is build the server in less than 60 seconds. The mission for our hosted platform is get it deployed to prod in less than 60 seconds. I'm sure there's a next coming, and maybe we can talk about that in a month or two. But compressing this to minutes to be able to interact with your own business logic agentically is something where without us, I think we're hours and days. And that's the opportunity that I'm really focused on right now.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it's been fun. It's been really exciting.
I can't even imagine. Because you didn't expect it. I mean, that's the fun part about it. It's like you just find yourself here and you're
we didn't expect it. I've written plenty of software that went nowhere. I've written plenty of software that was medium. And then I have a handful of stuff that actually landed. And it's exciting. I mean, what can I say? It's fun. It's humbling. It's scary. It's all the things. But at the end of the day, it has to be useful. There's some part of me that just the popularity is only great in that it reinforces the utility. If it were just popular and didn't do anything, maybe that's fun for a moment, but it's not what I'm here for. It's not why I get out of bed. I get out of bed to build tools. And if no one's using them, it's not fun.
Well, yeah, it'd be like a Hawk-Tuah moment or something like that for
exactly. It's a Flash
software. Yeah, it's okay, you're famous for what again?
Exactly.
Kind of closing out, like, what are you excited about over the next year?
I'm really excited to see more of how, I don't know, the same theme we've been talking about, this what's old feels new. Like, yes, there are agents in the mix, but how are we going to connect businesses and their data into this new consumer of it? I think there's so much to do there. I think we've sort of gone through the first generation of products that claimed to do this by pushing a button because everything was vibe coded. Like, we've done that. We've had our fun, and now it's like time to settle in and actually build AI enhanced things. My colleague Adam, who is leading a lot of our AI product work, talks about this context economy. And it's the idea that okay, so to your point earlier, that these agents are fairly dumb, but we overload them with so much importance and context and weight and responsibility. We're sort of increasingly viewing MCP servers as a way to conditionally expose the right context at the right time to steer behavior in a way where you actually can have much dumber agents take much more sophisticated actions by virtue of being steered more carefully by this programmatic interface. And so this is one of the R&D efforts that I'm most excited about right now is, let's say back to my example of the CSM and the data team, and they want to do a billing workflow. It's like, cool, there's 3 or 4 APIs involved there. Make them available to the agent, give it instructions on how to call them. Fine. These agents break down when you give them 40 or 50 tools. They just can't handle it for a variety of reasons. They just don't perform as well. So that means if we have 10 workflows, 10 simple workflows, we've lobotomized the agent. It has no more room to work or think. And so there's all these strategies all of a sudden for, well, what does it take to actually orchestrate that agent from the server so that instead of seeing 40 tools for the 10 possible workflows and a whole bunch of instructions, it sees 10 workflows that it can now invoke agentically, whether through sub-agents or dynamic orchestrations, all these strategies that we're sort of testing with partners right now. But the idea is we can make these agents more powerful by putting them on tighter rails, by being more prescriptive about what it is we want them to actually do than just throwing up the universe and expecting them to make sense of it. And so that's probably the thing that's most exciting to me. Candidly, it also represents the maximum blurring of my 2 universes right now. And that's exciting to me. I want my company to not feel like 2 companies. I want it to feel like one unified effort. And I think that's coming into focus quickly now.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Where does this all kind of converge with Prefect as it is, and then FastMCP and whatever?
I don't know if they have to converge as much as they need to complement each other. And I think based on what we're seeing, it's actually very, very, very straightforward. The best way to have agents in your company is to give them the best possible context. The best way to have the best possible context is to have the best possible data platform. And they sit next to each other, and good news, it turns out the same team is responsible for both. And so having a really modern sort of AI native data platform that doesn't try to leak into the full MCP and agentic space is just really good at the life cycle of data into the business, the curation of it, the updating of it, the materialization of it, everything. Sit right next to a product, almost bundled with a product that is the best way to take any amount of data and then expose it into the organization is the best footing I could put the business on. Neither of those products requires the other one. And that's an important thing. That's why I don't want to just converge them and smash them together. We could do that. I don't think anyone obviously benefits from forcing them together. But 2 standalone products that form the 2 bookends of the maximum leverage point and how businesses curate and then collect and then curate their own information, their own context, I think is such an exciting place to sit in the stack. And I think it's where we have found ourselves.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
It's going to be an exciting time. We'll have to, circle back.
We'll have to check in soon. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, at the rate things are going, just have to have it back next week.
Next week will be all different.
Yeah, exactly.
Feels that way these days.
Yeah, I mean, recently it was the Sonnet 4.5 just dropped, and that's, I guess, capable of coding autonomously for 30 hours or something crazy.
I saw something like that. I haven't proven it to myself yet, but I did see that. And it's just, I don't know if I trust it for 30 hours, if I'm honest.
What would it do for 30 hours? I don't know.
Well, if me hitting continue is any evidence, it would just write itself memo after memo after memo of what it wanted to do, and then finally, maybe at the end, say, you're absolutely right, and then actually do it.
Yeah, it's crazy. Just again, things are just moving at warp speed here. So for the audience, anything we talk about today, maybe take it with a grain of salt to some degree, because I don't even know.
Totally.
But that's
it's so true. Well, I appreciate it. I mean, I was thinking, what would our agenda even be for this conversation? And this was a really fun just way to explore a whole bunch of stuff that I hope remains relevant. Like, most genuinely, I do hope this remains relevant. But all of this is a year ago, we wouldn't have had this conversation. So a year from now, I'm sure it'll be something else.
No. When you were on the podcast last time, this was not in the bingo card to have this discussion.
No, not at all.
Oh, and then last
Thanks
November,
for having me back.
Last October, you didn't even know what Fast MCP was. You're just like,
no,
yeah,
we'd never heard MCP. We had no idea.
That's so cool. Well, it starts as a weekend project. Can change your life. So you never know.
Maybe so.
Yeah, just keep coding, keep building stuff. But yeah, Jeremiah, it's been great to chat with you, man. So
Joe, fantastic. Thank you so much.
Anytime. Yeah, later.
Bye.